I remember a particularly good day in Greenbrier High School cafeteria. It was lunchtime, and there must have been like one of the cheerleaders was sick that day, because I got to sit at the popular kid table at lunch, and the discussion was really interesting that day. It was about a party that had happened over the weekend, and it was like full of these delicious Harlequin romance stories about who had hooked up with who and who was dating and who was doing it, and all of these interesting stories. So I started to think about my own non-sex life. Like, if my life had been a show, it would have been no sex in the country. But anyway, so I was thinking about how all of this romance and excitement sounded really awesome, and I started thinking about my religion. Was my religion restrictive? And furthermore, was I serving a God who was just arbitrarily telling me I couldn't do these things? So if you've ever had that question or anything like it, this episode is probably for you. Hey, this is Amy Register with Greater Than Rubies, and we're going to talk about sex today from a biblical standpoint. And this was one of the biggest things, the biggest temptations in my life, and still is, because I think it's such a natural inclination to want to have that experience, that love feeling with another human. I think God made us that way, and that's why it's such a huge struggle. So when it comes to sex, what we're really talking about here is a huge difference in the worldview between, say, a Christian and a naturalist. The naturalist would tell us that these urges we have are primal and just legitimate, and sex is a great thing. It leads to offspring and keeps our race alive, and it also feels really good, so really, why not do it? Now, I know that doesn't represent the naturalist viewpoint in total, because there's a lot of great people who think that you still have to be mindful of yourself and others, and you don't want to get into a physical relationship, because there's lots of stuff that comes out of that. However, it's totally permitted in this naturalist viewpoint. On the other hand, Christians are like, hey, you should save sex till marriage, and some people even demonize it, which is definitely not biblical. There is nothing wrong with sex. It's just good for you to have it within the context of marriage. So I want to talk about that today, because I know this is a huge struggle. Okay, so this is a really legit question, right? And if you are asking this, you're certainly not alone, and you're definitely not the first person to wonder if God's keeping something good from you. So turn with me to Genesis 3, verses 1 through 6, but we're just going to read verse 5 for time's sake. It says, "For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good from evil." So here's Satan in the form of a serpent, and he is deceiving Eve, and he's causing her to question the goodness of God's character. Basically, he's saying, hey, here's this awesome piece of juicy fruit, and what you don't know is that not only is it good to taste and beautiful, but it's going to give you some wisdom that God hasn't told you about. You're going to have this new experience. Now, here's the part for you and me. Satan does this same old trick to us when it comes to sexuality. He's like, hey, look, it's beautiful, it's good, you're going to have this experience, go ahead and try it. So if you'll notice, Satan wasn't completely lying. He was just causing Eve to wonder about God's character, if he had the best in mind for her. And that's the same with us. We wonder, God, are you withholding something from me? So sex is pleasurable and supposed to be, inside and outside of marriage. But the thing is that God sets up these boundaries because he wants and he knows what's best for us, and he wants us to have a greater reward. This reminds me of an experiment that I think is so interesting. It was done by a man named Walter Mischel in the late 60s and early 70s. And what happened is that these researchers would ask a bunch of kids to come into a laboratory, and they would offer them one treat. Sometimes it was a marshmallow, so people call it the Marshmallow Test, but sometimes it was pretzels or other goodies. So these kids would come in and they would say, you can have this one treat now, but if you wait, there's gonna be a bigger reward. So there's a song on the radio right now by Ariana Grande, and it's called Love Me Harder. If you haven't heard it, don't look it up. But the lyrics go like this. There's a part that says, I know your motives and you know mine. The ones that love me, I tend to leave behind. If you know about me and choose to stay, then take this pleasure and take it with a pain. Like, this song sums it up for me. It's like the world is offering you one marshmallow, but in the case of sex, it actually comes along with pain. So you like get some pleasure and some pain. But what God is offering us is like this smorgasbord of never-ending awesome marshmallowy goodness, and we're like, nah, I'm gonna take this little tiny marshmallow right here. And God's like shaking my head. So the total sum of this story is that God is not withholding from you. He is definitely trying to protect you, get you to trust his goodness so that he can give you the best possible love life. And I know this is weird, but God actually does want you to have an awesome sex life with your partner for life, your husband or wife. Hey, if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, I would love it if you would subscribe. This will boost my ego, of course, but it will also get godly biblical advice and wisdom higher up in the search rankings on Google. So that would be cool. Also, if you have any questions about the Bible or any advice in general, you can send me an email at Amy, A-M-I-E, at greaterthanrubies.org. Thanks. See you later.
Funny. I don't even like marshmallows.